Moment, jump in the chat, say hello, let me know how it's going, and if there is anything you guys want to talk about today when it comes to Freemasonry. I wanted to mention the United Grand Lodge of England, England's decision, along with their partners, to not appeal the decision of the court um, regarding the Metropolitan Police's policy that all members who are Freemasons, as well as members of other hierarchical organizations, need to declare their membership, both past and current membership. I'm going to talk about that. That's on my Facebook, it's on my socials. Also, I thought it was relevant to note that today at 10 a.m., I did my push-ups, part of the Push for Challenge, the February Push for Better Challenge. It was 160 push-ups done in honor of, or to represent, the 16% improvement in mental well-being that results from having at least one close friend or associate. That strikes me as pretty relevant to and for Freemasonry for obvious reasons. Um, right, within Freemasonry, one of the things you get, if nothing else, is a lot of close friends to our credit. Hold on just 1 second. Let me do something here quickly. There we go. For the time being, though, let's wait to see who joins. Please take a moment, hit the like and subscribe button. Afternoon, brother Michael Moore. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. I also hope that things are going well in Michigan. Don't forget, Michael Moore. I know you know about this Dream Seeker, but March 28th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., a community services fair in the Windsor Masonic Temple. I hope that you will check it out when you get the chance. Or I hope you come out for that. March 28th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Might give you some ideas for things you can do in your neck of the woods. Dream Seeker, hope you're doing well. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I like this shirt also. And I hope that everybody watching this is doing well. For the time being, though, let's wait. Let's give it some time, and let's see who joins. We're actually going to have a few artists on the 28th of March as well, which I'm looking forward to. Nice. Maybe we'll grab it on the 28th, and then I'll bring your coin on that day as well, because I know I still owe it to you. I've still got it, like I said, and whenever you want. If you want it earlier than that, I can mail it to you. Otherwise, I'll give it to you in person. Yes, greetings from Texas. I'd love to visit you guys in Texas, by the way. Done it a few times, would love to do it again. How's it going, Omaha? Thank you for being here. I'm doing well. How are you doing? So let me just pull this up. I'm going to make this a poll question in just 1 second. Dun, dun, dun. Trying to figure out how to make this a question. This is going to be a very long question. Do you agree with the United Grand Lodge of England's decision not to appeal the judgment? This is a dun, dun, dun. This is a very long question to ask. To add not to appeal the judgment. Here we go. I'm going to write it this way. Allowing Met Police to add Freemasonry to make Freemasonry a declarable Do you agree with UGLE's decision not to appeal, allowing Met Police to make Freemasonry a declarable association? I just got to figure out how to make this shorter. I'm going to say not the best worded, but there we go. As a person related to Freemasons and Russian German Jew descendants, I mean, that does make a lot of sense, Brother Michael Moore. And as somebody, especially who came from, if you have a history of, for example, if you have Jewish heritage, especially if, your ancestors came from Russia or Germany, obviously you're going to be rightly concerned about lists, making people declarable, having to declare things. Having said that, I've always been much more, I guess, sanguine about the policy. I can recognize how and why the policy came to be. To my knowledge and my understanding, one of the confirmations that the United Grand Lodge of England received was or is that the list of Freemasons is not accessible, or the declared list is not accessible to a large part of the staffing at the Met, but rather a relatively small number of staffers and not publicly available. Now, just because something is not supposed to be publicly available doesn't mean that it doesn't have the risk of being hacked or being broken into, or the information being released accidentally or potentially purposefully. So I definitely think it's one of those cases where we as Freemasons, it's not enough to know who is authorized to access the information. I think the better question is, how secure is that information? Because I have no issue with a boss or a supervisor, if, to manage conflict of interest, knowing if someone is or isn't a Freemason. I have a problem with the general public knowing about that. And so then the question becomes, how do we maintain the security of the information and the security of the disclosures? Seeing if I can actually ask this on X as well. I'm guessing X is going to have very interesting answers. Dun, dun, dun. We'll see what people on X say. I can guess what it's going to be personally, but we'll see. But as of right now, I think the United Grand Lodge of England has decided that there's nothing else they can do. I've got the actual statement here, which I think I'll read in a moment. I should read the first hour in, but it has been posted on social media. You can find the actual release from United Grand Lodge of England on their website. I've never heard of a lesser key of Solomon, Saran, so I'm not sure to what you're referring. Solomon is very important within Freemasonry. I've talked about that before, but he's not the exclusively important figure. He's one of many important figures within Freemasonry. So you need to keep that in mind as well. Actually, by the way, Brother Michael Moore, we are organizing a Zoom meeting for one of my lodges. I will send you the information so you can, so you're able to join us if you want. It's the end of March as well. Not March 28th, it's March 26th. It's for Masons. I'll send you the information ASAP. You can join. All right, let's give it a bit of time though, and let's see who joins. First 60 minutes, I just hang out and chat. Interesting, 5 votes. So no is at 80, so more people would like UGLE to appeal than not. I'm always hesitant to ask these kind of questions just because one of the things that I find is at the end of the day, it's not our decision, right? It is UGLE's decision. And so I think in that circumstance, it's really important for us to remember, it's hard to be the person in charge. It's hard to be the person who has to make the decision. And so because of that, I do like to try my best to give, at least to a certain extent, these guys the benefit of the doubt. As someone who's been in leadership positions before, sometimes there's no good answer. And presumably, based on what it's indicating, I guess UGLE did receive legal advice before deciding not to appeal. But we can discuss this more as we get closer to it. No worries, Brother Michael Moore. So United Grand Lodge of England, so in United Kingdom, the Metropolitan Police Force, which is the largest police force in England, I believe it's out of London primarily, recently created a policy. I believe the policy was implemented in 2025, requiring anyone who is a member of a quote unquote hierarchical organization to declare their membership to their superior officers, either current members or past members. Now, the policy never, to my understanding, mentions Freemasons specifically. Rather, it mentions hierarchical organizations. However, everybody took this to mean and understands that it means Freemasons and Freemasonry. As of right now, February 24th, to my knowledge, approximately 367 individuals have declared their membership, either current or past, in Freemasonry or other hierarchical organizations. The United Grand Lodge of England, along with the Order of Women Freemasons and Freemasons, there's a third group as well, the Honorable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons, they're all United Kingdom groups for Freemasonry, appealed the decision to the courts and said that requiring either past or current members of Masonic lodges to declare their membership violated the members' right to privacy, as well as violated their rights to free assembly, and could potentially result in discrimination against those members by others, by superior officers who have negative views of Freemasonry. So they asked for basically a judicial review, meaning they asked the courts to step in and not allow the Metropolitan Police Force to enforce that policy to require declarations until the courts could review it. As of approximately, I think it was 3 or 4 days ago, last week, the court in England threw out the appeal or the action by UGLE, United Grand Lodge of England, basically saying, A, they did not believe that the declaration policy actually infringed on the rights of Freemasons, and even if it did infringe on the rights of Freemasons, it is a reasonable policy because the necessity of managing potential conflicts of interest outweighs the rights for privacy in this particular instance. And as of today, United Grand Lodge of England has reported that they are not going to be appealing that decision. Therefore, as of February 24th, 2026, the decision stands. And if you are a police officer with the Metropolitan Police Force and you are a Freemason, either currently or in the past, you are required to declare that membership. Now, again, it's not exclusive to being a Freemason. However, everybody kind of understands that this policy is targeted towards Freemasons. I personally, as I've said before, as someone who worked in criminal justice field, I can recognize that conflict of interest is a real thing, and trying to manage it is a challenging task, a challenging process. And the Metropolitan Police Force has decided, in this case, the best way to manage it is through declarations. I understand that UGLE has received assurances from the Metropolitan Police Force that the declaration list is not publicly available, nor is it available to the majority of staff, rather a relatively limited number of Metropolitan Police officers. I would want more assurances as to the security of the declaration list. Even if a select few are authorized to view it, that doesn't mean these type of lists and information is not subject to hacking or accidental disclosures or people trying to steal the list somehow if it's a physical copy. How are you making sure not just that, the authorized people can see it, but also that it's not at risk of compromise, would be my question. Having said that, that's where we're at as of February 24th, 2026. Well, I mean, I would be perfectly fine with any law enforcement agency anywhere in the world requiring disclosure of not Masonic membership per se. I've always said it should be based on membership numbers. So if you're part of any organization or group that has, let's say, nationally over 20,000 members, let's use that as an example, then I'm perfectly fine with having to disclose that or declare that to your superior officers, because there can be a risk of conflict of interest, right? If you're part of a group like your aunt's knitting circle that has 5 members and you meet once a month, I'm comfortable saying the risk of conflict of interests are so limited that I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about conflict of interest popping up. And if it does so happen that 1 in a million case of you get called to deal with the situation, and it just so happens that the person you're arresting or dealing with is a member of your knitting circle, then I'm comfortable dealing with that after the fact, having a after incident disclosure, basically. But if there's sufficient number of people within your group that it's very possible that you will, end up dealing with a disclosure, a conflict, then I think it makes sense to try to manage that beforehand by having to preemptively disclose. And you can quibble about the number. There's no precise number I can give. Some may say 10,000, some may say 30,000. We can pick a number, maybe compromise on it. But there is a risk that if you're a police officer and a Mason, you may get called on to have to arrest another Mason or have to deal with another Mason in some way. That can result in the view or what's the word I'm looking for? The appearance of conflict of interest. If people were to find out, better to deal with it preemptively. That is true. People have murdered Freemasons and vandalized vehicles. Again, that is why it's important that the information, it's not simply about who is authorized to see the information. It's about how is information being protected and being preserved and being secured, right? And actually, the UGLE statement, again dated today, regarding their decision not to appeal the court's decision, is worth a review and worth a read. So, Well, I mean, it's not about whether it does affect or doesn't affect. Like when I was a part of the criminal justice system, I was always taught um, when it comes to disclosures and conflict of interest, it's not just about whether there is one or isn't one. It's also about whether people perceive there to be one. The bell, the book, and the candle. How does it look? How does it read? How does it sound? So, for example, let's take the police out of it. Let's imagine that I'm in a position to hire others. I work in a company and I'm in a position to give somebody a promotion. And I know that there's two resumes in front of me. One of them is a Freemason, one of them isn't a Freemason. I'm not going to even make the decision. I'm going to recuse myself and ask a colleague or a coworker to make the decision as to who gets the promotion for me. Because I want to be comfortable making that decision, even if people did not know that I'm a Freemason and one of the applicants is a Freemason. I wouldn't be comfortable with the risk that it could be found out and perceived that way. Because no matter what I do, it's a conflict. If I, even if the Mason is more qualified for the position, if I select him for the promotion or more qualified for the promotion, if I select him for the promotion, then automatically people are going to be assuming that it's an illegal, not illegal, but it was improper. It was wrong for me to do so. And it's not going to be fair to the person who gets it. If, on the other hand, I give it to the non-Mason, people will assume or ask the question, did I go harder on the Mason? Because I was so concerned with the appearance of conflict of interest, did I choose purposely to maybe ignore some of that Mason's accomplishments? There's basically no way to make a good decision. So the best thing to do is simply not make the decision at all. Police, unfortunately, can't make those same judgment calls. If you're a police officer and you get called to the scene of a crime or you get called to deal with something, you cannot, under those circumstances, decide, right, that you're not going to deal with those situations. You have to respond. And if it's a Mason you're responding to, then so be it. You can't pass it off to somebody else. So all you can do in that case is try your best to disclose the conflict beforehand or the potential for conflict beforehand. That way, at least as much as possible, everything appears to be on the up and up. Um, that's true. And well, so far, what the Met has said is nothing will happen, right? If they disclose that they are a Freemason, it's kept in a disclosure, file. Few people have access to it. But let's imagine you're a police officer and you get called to a crime that's taking place at the United Grand Lodge of England. And as a consequence of getting called for that, afterwards you've done your arrest report, you've noted it was done at UGLE Hall. Your superior officer knows that you are also a Freemason, and maybe you had to arrest some Masons. And your superior officer can then make a note and decide, okay, we're now going to give this investigation over to somebody else who we know is not a Freemason. You explain to that other officer what happened, who you arrested, why you arrested them. And the third party, the non-Mason police officer, can take over. And you've managed the situation and the conflict as best as you can. That is true, right? And that is an issue. Hopefully, Brother Michael Moore, and again, they do talk about this, because you can always sue on that particular situation, right? So if you disclose to somebody that you're a Freemason or a superior officer, that you're a Freemason, and the boss or superior officer does not allow you to have a promotion, and you believe it's because they have bias against Freemasons, you could potentially sue them for that or bring them to some type of civil or other type of, I don't know what the word is, civil or other type of engagement or responsibility, or a workplace board. right? It's hard because you'd have to be able to prove, at least in a balance of probabilities, that that is why you're denied the promotion. But there's no simple and good answer to this, right? In a workplace environment, if you have to make a decision, whether it be disciplinary or otherwise, about a Masonic employee, and if you're a Mason as well, again, you can potentially just give that decision to another coworker who's not a Mason. Um, Police, you have to respond to whatever's thrown your way. You don't get to pass it on to somebody else in the moment. So you need to preemptively deal with conflicts of interest. Um, well, the point is dealing with it after the fact. So again, I'm a Freemason. I'm a police officer. I get called to a criminal investigation. Let's say I get called to a disturbance taking place at the United Grand Lodge of England headquarters. And I am both a police officer and a Freemason. I go there. Let's say I have to arrest a Freemason, which could happen. It's possible. And we both happen to be members of the same organization. I arrest him. He's booked. My superior officer learns of the arrest, is aware that I'm a Freemason, and says, okay, from this point forward, you're not dealing with this offense anymore. You're going to report what happened to another officer, and they will take over the investigation and proceed from that point on. So you've managed the potential for conflict as best as you can. There's no perfect way to resolve it. The other option, and you could do, is after the arrest, if there's no declaration policy, you go to your superior officer and say, I've arrested a Freemason. I'm a Freemason. I think there could be the potential that people could believe a conflict of interest, and you then pass it off at that point. But then you're relying on, first of all, you're relying on the goodwill of the Masonic police officer. And second, people may still feel like there was a conflict at the time of the arrest. Better to deal with it as best as you can. And you go from there. Hello, Sebastian. No filter, calm down. I'm not arresting anybody. Leave Smokey be. Sebastian Bruce, how's it going? Thank you for being here. I hope that you are doing well, and thank you for joining. In another half hour, I will read the decision or the statement from ugle.org.uk on this day regarding the decision not to appeal. That's nice. That's really good. Good for them. I mean, I know the war is still going on. We might hear about it in today's State of the Union. I'm not sure if you guys will be watching State of the Union, but if you will be, let me know. I'm not going to be able to watch it because I have got a Scottish Rite meeting happening. However, I will be watching it after the fact because I've said it a million times. I know people probably get sick of me saying it. You cannot separate the success of the country, or sorry, not even success. You cannot separate the condition of the country in which you live from the condition of Masonic lodges therein contained. That could be political, economic, Smokey doesn't look stupid. I may look stupid, but Smokey doesn't look stupid. Be it political, economic, or otherwise. So I guess that is my humble opinion on that. I mean, we'll see. We're going to put this guy in a timeout for just 5 minutes. Everybody needs to calm down. I hate this stuff. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what takes place. We'll see what goes on. But as of right now, it seems like the situation has for lack of a better term, resolved the policies in place. UGLE is encouraging everybody who is a metropolitan police officer and either past, present, or future, sorry, I guess not future, past or present Masonic member to disclose their membership. So there you go, which I think is appropriate and fair, personally. Actually, today does mark 4 years since the start of the Russians' unjustified full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It's interesting to note that there is a recognized Grand Lodge in both Russia and Ukraine. So I think that's worth noting. Both are still recognized. I've actually was for a time considering visiting Russia to visit Masonic lodges there. I ended up not doing it because it was expensive. I have my issues, obviously, as do many people, with the Russian government. I was about to sneeze, Putin in particular. However, that should not reflect on the membership, the Masonic membership in either Russia or, for that matter, in Ukraine. Whatever you think of the politics, it does not matter, in my opinion, as it relates to the governance or the Masons therein. All right, Smoke, you need to calm down too. Otherwise, you're gonna get timed out. I like you a lot, but I won't stop you from timing people out if they get too stuck in dumb trolling stuff both directions. USS Gerald Ford soldiers are intentionally clogging the toilets on the ship. I have no idea if that's true or not true. I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't think anybody knows. Maybe, for whatever it's worth, we'll figure stuff out in uh, the State of the Union, and they'll let us know. Who knows? I have no clue myself what is going to happen. I don't think anybody does. I think we have to be incredibly. I'm trying to think what a good word is. I think we have to be incredibly cautious and humble with this idea that we can predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen with Iran. We don't know what's going to happen in Israel. I think a lot of people say they know and they don't. So let's just see what happens. Thank you, VS. I'll take it. Please hit like and subscribe. Well, again, we don't even know for sure if that's happening. I'm not sure I necessarily believe the report of clogging the toilets. Because, first of all, I'm not sure if clogging the toilets would actually stop a warship from heading to the Middle East. Um, I think it's Catholic as well. I could be mistaken, but I think it is um, a Catholic order. I could be mistaken. There's nothing I know much about, but hey, like any group, I don't care if it's Catholic, Protestant, religious, non-religious, trying to support the people of Ukraine and, giving them supplies. More power to them. Very early on in this war, actually, my Masonic Lodge donated to the Grand Lodge of Ukraine. So credit to them for that. Uh, what, Sebastian Bruce? What am I guessing? I have to put you in timeout. In another 20 minutes, 25 minutes, we're going to read the official statement from UGLE regarding the Metropolitan Police decision. I'm not going to guess. You tell me. What am I guessing? And if you're just joining us, please take a moment, hit the like button, and hit the subscribe button. What are the power structures, Rooster? I'm not a fan of that myself. I'm not one. When I hear, I don't think there are worldwide power structures. I think there are individual or decentralized power structures. Very often they are at odds with each other. I don't believe there is a single, or unified governing structures in the world. I think it's actually a series of decentralized power structures. Very often you will find, at least in my opinion, that they are actually in opposition to one another, for whatever it's worth. But what are the power structures to which you think there exist, Rooster Cogburn? And again, please take a moment if you're joining us and you're new to hit that like and subscribe button. I do these streams Mondays through Fridays, 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Oh, and by the way, I mentioned this before. I've done interviews about NASA science. Freemasons should care about astrology, should care about, I guess, astronomy, excuse me, should care about science, should care about the universe. I've done news or stories on Medium about the James Webb Telescope. I recently saw an article titled James Webb Telescope Takes a First Peek Inside Uranus. I'm not too proud to say I laughed at that headline very much. Freemasons are not evil, CBA, but okay. Well, Rooster Cogburn, it seems like it's in your nature to believe foolish things, so there you go. Mr. Keeps, are you LOLing about the James Webb Telescope's first peek inside Uranus as well? And thank you, Sebastian Bruce, for that. We are growing. The subscribers are now at over 3,600. My hope is I can get to over 4,000 by the end of March. That's the goal. Knock on wood. I hope you follow me, by the way, on Medium, Mr. Keeps. How's the cravings going? I know yesterday you said it was pretty significant cravings. I hope they're going better today. And I'm glad that my stream makes you smile. We could use more smiling in the world. Because very often there's not enough of it. Like I said, we also have the State of the Union address today. I wish I could watch it, but sadly, I will be in, well, not sadly, I shouldn't say sadly. I will be at a Scottish Rite celebration. So, well, Mr. Keeps, I hope that you don't, because I want you to be around for a long time. Now, obviously, there's no guarantee in life in anything, but smoking, I think the odds are it's going to limit your lifespan. So I hope you don't smoke. I hope that the stress of family and work calms down for you a little bit. I usually find that stress is stressful in the moment, but when you look back on it, you realize it actually wasn't as bad as you thought it would be, or wasn't as bad as it seemed. At least that's my experience, for whatever it's worth. You become a good ice skater, Sebastian Bruce. I wish you the best of luck in your ice skating career. Mr. Keeps, what did you think about UGLE's decision to basically not appeal or continue on with their attempt to stop the Metropolitan Police's new hierarchical policy decision? I mean, SRP, again, there are no guarantees in life. I could, for example, blindfold myself and walk across the road. I might end up being, I might end up okay, I might not be, but why take the risk, It's like everything in life. Why? Again, there are some times when it's worth it taking a risk. I just don't see the benefit in any sense to taking the risk of smoking, either financially or otherwise. Again, I have smoked in the past, but it's not something I want to continue doing, that's for sure. I would be with Dream Seeker on this one. How longer? I'm not sure reading what to what you're referring. There's also, by the way, on a side note, when it comes to Iran, there is the um, Grand Lodge of Iran in Exile, which currently primarily meets in Los Angeles, to my knowledge. It's something I'd like to talk more about at some point. So we'll see if I get the time to actually discuss it more in detail. I've given some questions about it in the past, so we'll see. We're going to give it a bit more time. We're going to wait to see who joins. As always, please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. And thank you to everybody who joined me today at 10 a.m. I did my 160 push-ups in front of Mason Baby House, which is a museum here in Windsor in downtown. It's a really cool spot. Doesn't get the love it deserves. Very close to the International Windsor Transit Terminal on Pitt Street. If you're ever in Windsor, check it out. It's worth it. It's free. It's free admission as well. On a side note, I'm with Mr. Keeps. Mr. Keeps and I, we don't agree on many things, but I think we both agree on that. I think Mr. Keeps is right. I have the same view personally myself. So, but for the time being, we're just going to wait to see who joins. I agree. Everybody should watch my stream. We'll get people coming and going. Right now, I'm just taking questions. I'm going to read the report or read the statement from UGLE in about 20 minutes. Actually, first thing what I'm going to do, though, is get some more water because I am thirsty. I'll be back in a moment. I'm not going far, I promise. It's actually interesting. I was at Caesars Windsor this morning. Again, it's right next to me, so I'm there all the time for the free coffee. Not that, I don't appreciate the coffee I get from people like Mr. Keeps, but I'm there all the time for the free coffee. And while I was there, not the entire, but much of the second floor was actually roped off. All the machines were roped off because, thank you, Dream Seeker, because they're updating them. And it was really interesting just to see. I've never seen all of the machines kind of with these blank screens on. I took a picture of it. They're supposed to be updated and restarted today at 4 in the morning. I was kind of thinking it might be kind of fun to go there if I can, get up that early or not sleep. Actually be there at 4 in the morning and videotape them turning back on from a personal YouTube channel. Just because I thought it might be kind of interesting to see. 654 SCLLA. I don't know what that means, Tyrone. And thank you. I do think Freemasonry is important myself, so I try my... Oh, wait, are you Lodge 654, Tyrone Sellers? I just thought that was an interesting kind of note, interesting side note. Or something interesting, personally. Let me just refresh this for 1 second. No, not to my knowledge. And again, that's the other question. Like, why now? Because it feels kind of like they're bending to conspiracy theories. And also, again, why is so much of this emphasis on Freemasons? Like, of the number of disclosures that have currently taken place, it's 362 is the last I heard. Of that 362, to my knowledge, the vast majority are Freemasons, but they're not exclusively Freemasons. So I think it's important to keep that in mind also. It's your nighttime. Well, get yourself to sleep. Get yourself to sleep. No worries. It was nice having you here. 15 minutes, we're going to go over the statement from Freemasons of UGLE. It could have been. I mean, there was a report a few years ago. When I say report, I think it was in the 90s, that claimed that there was a Mason who was involved in the investigation of other Freemasons. And even though this was way before the disclosure policy, and even though they did not find any wrongdoing, there was still a reprimand against, I believe, the police force and the individual, because it goes back to what I was saying. The argument is it could be viewed as potential conflict of interest, which does make sense to me. I mean, honestly, it doesn't. I'm if you're getting taxpayer dollars, it's reasonable to have to consider appearances from a taxpayer perspective. And even though there was no indication that the police officer had done anything wrong, it was still reprimanded because he should have disclosed. Once he discovered he was investigating other Freemasons, he should have disclosed that fact, to avoid even the appearance of conflict of interest. Now, I personally, again, it's not something I would disagree with. I can recognize why that would be a concern. We are, and I've said this a million times, I am a citizen first, and I am a Freemason second. Right? I am a citizen first. I need to care about my country, and my community. And I need to recognize if they have concerns, I need to be willing to address them as best as I can. I'm not always going to be the best at it. I'm not always going to be the best at succeeding, but I will try my best, right? And that goes into this question I've heard a million times, which is a whole other can of tuna, which is, how would you deal with it if, how would you deal with this situation if, for example, your citizen, your country outlawed Freemasonry? I've been thinking about that answer a lot. I didn't have a good answer the last time. The last time I was asked that question. I think I've got a better answer, which is, if it was the case that I was in a country that outlawed Freemasonry, first, I would do everything in my power to act in such a way as to ensure that that never came about, because I do my best to integrate Freemasonry into the community and make it so relevant to the community that if it ever became illegal, it would actually negatively affect the community. People always ask me why it is that I care so much about integrating and making Freemasonry relevant to the community, economically, socially, heritage-wise, architecturally wise. It's because I don't want Freemasonry to go away, and it matters. The more relevant it is to people's lives, the more likely it is to remain, and the more likely people are to recognize its value, right? It's easy to make something illegal if you don't recognize its value. If you're relevant to your communities and people recognize the value of it, it's very hard to make it illegal, because people are going to say, hey, those Freemasons support my business. Those Freemasons support the hospital. Those Freemasons support our community. Those Freemasons have valuable buildings from a heritage and architectural perspective. But then, even if it did happen, I would use whatever resources I have in a legal sense to advocate for the return of Freemasonry. I would write letters to the newspaper. I would, write letters to my members of parliament. I would hold information sessions. I would, at different fairs, about what Freemasonry actually is. And at a certain point, if it got to a matter of, let's say, the civil disobedience level, then I'd like to think I would have the strength of character to be willing to go to jail for it. So, for example, if they told me you are no longer allowed to write letters supporting Freemasonry or have YouTube podcasts supporting Freemasonry, or you're no longer allowed to, I don't know, hold up a sign on the street that says Freemasonry is good, or risk jail, then I'd like to think I'd be willing to go to jail, but continue to express my belief that Freemasonry is good. But my hope is it never gets to that point, because Freemasonry will be recognized as being so valuable, necessary, and useful, and a public good and relevant to communities, that to make it illegal would be harmful. So what happens if a Freemason is investigating a Freemason? Well, again, there's a limit to what you can do, Michael, right? So you can't solve for every possible situation. However, preemptively disclosing is a way to at least limit the possibilities. So, for example, I'm a Freemason, I'm a police officer. Or let's use the example of other criminal justice. So let's use the example of being a probation officer. Because I was a probation officer for many years, right? Let's say I have a client, I'm supervising on probation, and I don't know that they're a Freemason. They don't know I'm a Freemason, but we find out years later. Well, if when I first got the job, I disclosed, which I did, by the way, to my superiors that I am a Freemason, if 20 years down the line, somebody brings it up and says, hey, you supervise this person, we now know you're both Freemasons. I don't know how they would find out, but somehow they find out about it. My response would be, I was never trying to hide anything. My supervisors were and are aware of my Masonic affiliations. I did all I could, right? Because it's not a question I would ask in the course of being a probation officer, nor is it a question that's relevant. So the question, I would say I did all I could to manage the risk, to manage the potential for conflict. And you can search through my files if you have concerns, but I did what I could. Again, there's a point at which there's nothing more you can do, but that doesn't mean there's nothing you do. Rather, you recognize the limitations. I do not know what, well, they should. I mean, they shouldn't disclose to all the suspects, obviously. What they should do is disclose to their supervisor. And then the supervisor, who will know, assigns a new person, right? So, for example, again, I arrest a Freemason. Maybe I know they're a Freemason somehow, but they don't know I'm a Freemason. Again, however it works, the disclosure comes into effect and a new supervisor takes over. Just like if I'm working at a job and I have to decide who gets a promotion and I have two resumes in front of me, if I don't know that one of them is a Freemason, then so be it. There's nothing I can do. But if I know about it, I can take steps, right? It's just about recognizing there's a limit to what you can do and trying to manage expectations and manage conflicts within those limitations. In the same way, it goes back to my numbers theory, right? Like I said before, in my personal opinion, if you're part of a group or organization that is over, let's say, 20,000 members nationally, you should have to disclose membership. Well, you could argue, what if you're part of a group that has 10 members nationally, like your grandma's knitting circle? Again, there's a balancing act. Maybe it would make sense to disclose that. However, practically speaking, that's just too many disclosures. It's too hard to keep track of. It would overwhelm the system. So I'm comfortable with the idea of not requiring a preemptive disclosure, but rather, if you have to arrest somebody who's part of your knitting circle, after the arrest takes place, you disclose it and you get taken off the case. But once, within a certain number, there's a reasonable expectation that you may run into somebody or have professional dealings with somebody with whom you share this private link. So therefore, preemptively disclose, and at least you can say you did all you could. I do not know, pretzels, what black and white means in terms of my shirt. Not a big fan of Trump myself, but that's my own personal opinion. I mean, I suppose it's social engineering, Mr. Keeps, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, but that's true for almost anything, right? That's true for sports. Like, there's a reason why professional sports teams like the NFL get involved with different charitable activities and different groups and different organizations and wears pink for breast cancer and sends their professional football players out into the public, to different events and is part of parades and is part of floats. And they're always talking about the economic benefits of the economic benefits of a stadium in town, and they're supporting local businesses, and their training camps are huge, and they tailgate. It's because the owners want that sports team to be part of the social and economic fabric of the community. And the community, by the way, also wants to create a relationship with that sports team because they don't want it going anywhere. They want that sports team to stay as part of their community. And it's important that it be recognized as value, right? So, I mean, my question would be, is that any different, Mr. Keeps, right? Whatever you're doing, and whether it's a business, a social club, a social group, a professional sports team, an amateur sports team, a civil or civic organization, right? You want it to be relevant. You want it to matter to the community. Now, I'll argue there are some Masons who take a different approach, and it's absolutely believe that the relevance of Freemasonry in the community does not matter. It's about the relevance to the membership. And in their opinion, you could just as easily hold a successful Masonic meeting in a brother's garage with 7 people as with 500 people at UGLE. I'm just not of that opinion. And I think the danger of that is if you're not relevant to the community and you're keeping yourself private and you're keeping yourselves separate from the community, it's incredibly easy for bad actors to make claims about Freemasonry that cannot be disputed because you're private and because you're not relevant to people's lives. And it's much more easier for negative governance and governments to try to remove you from society. You need to matter. You need to be important. You need to be relevant. It's a safety mechanism for Freemasons as much as it is a way to help communities. Both of them can work in tandem. Again, why does it matter that a football, back when I used to help out and assist with a wheelchair sport association, every now and then we'd bring out football players from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to play sports with our kids, right? With the kids in the group. Did the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have to play sports? Did it matter, in a wheelchair with other kids in wheelchairs? Did it make any difference to their ability to play football or to win games? It mattered because they recognized that they need to get people to show up to the games. They need to be part of the community in order for the football team to, exist. If it becomes not profitable, they can't be around. That's why I always say the ultimate goal of football is not to win games. It's to continue playing football. That's what's most important. That's why so much of a football player's time is spent doing media interviews and taking part in community events and taking part in charitable activities. Let me know if that made sense. Michael Moore, did that make sense to you? Mr. Keeps, did that make sense to you? Etc., etc. Right? Being a football player is about more than being a football player. It's about more than winning games. It's about your relevance to and effect within the community. Being a Mason is about way more than being a Mason within a lodge. It's about your effect and relevance within your communities. Let's give it another, let's say, 1 minute. I'm going to read this report from the United Grand Lodge of England. And yes, if any brethren are digging out from the snow, let me know how you're doing. And also, on a side note, if you are a Mason from New York and you've not done so yet, call a brother who might be struggling, might be older, who might have issues getting out of the snow, and let me know, what your how they're doing, right? If you're an able-bodied Mason and you're able to, maybe visit a brother who's not so able-bodied, shovel his driveway for him. Can't hurt, or shovel his sidewalk for him. Charity-wise, volunteering, dream seeker, all that stuff is good and makes sense to me. Okay, so I was going to mention this before. This is the statement from the United Grand Lodge of England in conjunction with Order of Women Freemasons and Honorable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons, which represent Freemasonry in England, Wales, Isle of Man, and Channel Islands, have announced the following as of February 24th, 2026. They will not be appealing against the judgment of Mr. Justice Chamberlain, which turned down the application for judicial review of the decision by the Metropolitan Police to introduce a new policy that it has added Freemasonry to its list of declarable associations. Although the judgment contains legal and factual errors, after taking legal advice, UGLE does not believe that an appeal would be in the best interest of Freemasonry. While acknowledging concerns over police vetting procedures, UGLE remains of the view that the decision is unfair and discriminatory against Freemasons and shows a fundamental misunderstanding of Freemasonry as it is today. Freemasonry is one of the world's oldest and largest non-religious and non-political organizations, now including both men and women, focusing on personal development, moral integrity, and community service. Originating from medieval stonemason guilds, it brings members of various backgrounds together to share values of fellowship, charity, and mutual support through local lodges. Freemasons aim to shape their lives around the four important values of integrity, friendship, respect, and charity. See, N. Drang, I can just call you ND. Why would you say that? Like, what if I were to say to you, I think it's time you switch from Catholicism to Freemasonry? Wouldn't that make me an asshole? And thereby, by you saying that, doesn't that make you an asshole? If you want to be Catholic, be Catholic. If you want to be a Freemason, be a Freemason. If you want to be both, be both. UGLE understands the pressure on the Metropolitan Police Service and other police public services to be more transparent in their vetting procedures as part of their mandate to enforce law and order, reduce crime, and keep people safe across Greater London. Whilst their core mission focuses on building trust, maintaining high standards, and providing policing by consent, UGLE remains concerned about proportionality. Well, you can follow God and faith and be a Freemason. When you say that, I assume you mean within a Catholic context. There's nothing stopping you from being a Freemason and following whatever religious beliefs you have. And it's definitely asshole-like to tell somebody they should do X and not Y. If what they're doing is not hurting anybody. So again, you're welcome to be a Freemason and a Catholic, or you're welcome to be a Catholic and not be a Freemason, right? You are allowed to do and follow what it is you think is best. Well, there you go. I mean, Sebastian, don't stay up too late. And if you're staying up late with permission, make sure you also have permission if you're under 18 to be on this channel. Here it is. UGLE understands the pressure on the Metropolitan Police Service and other police and public services to be more transparent in their vetting procedures as part of their mandate to enforce law and order, reduce crime, and keep people safe across Greater London. Whilst their core mission focuses on building trust, maintaining high standards, and providing policing by consent, UGLA remains concerned about proportionality. The Anglo-Leany Inquiry is expected to make recommendations to His Majesty's government on disclosures required of police officers. UGLE has made representations to the inquiry encouraging a recommendation that any requirements to declare memberships of associations apply equally to all associations and do not discriminate against Freemasons. UGLE has been working with the inquiry to explain Freemasonry and how its principles reinforce the standards expected of public servants, and that it should not be the subject of discrimination. Important clarifications regarding the new policy. In the course of the court proceedings, the Metropolitan Police Services made some important and welcome clarifications regarding the new policy. It has undertaken to the court that the declarations data it collects from Freemasons who work for it will, after collection by the local professional standards unit and transmission to the professional integrity assurance unit, be stored confidentially and in such a manner that it is accessible by 5 senior officers. Again, I'd want to make sure I have more information about how securely it will be stored. I understand that there are 5 officers who will have access to it, which I think is a reasonable number. However, again, it's great to store it confidentiality, but how secure is that storage? I want more information about the nature of the confidential storage. Is it password protected? By how many passwords? Is it under lock and key? Etc., etc. And 2, it will be used where relevant to consider risk management measures, example, to avoid or mitigate conflicts of interest, or for the purposes of criminal misconduct investigations. The Metropolitan Police Services has also stated that officers and staff are free to become or remain Freemasons, and it confirmed during court hearings on February 11th that it has not started any disciplinary proceedings against officers or staff for failing to declare their Masonic affiliations. Now that a decision has been reached that a declaration requirement is lawful, UGLE is encouraging any remaining members who have not yet made their declaration in the light of uncertainty to do so promptly. Adrian Marsh, Grand Secretary of UGLE, stated, having sought to address the discriminatory impact of the Met's decision through court proceedings, we will now redouble our work on showcasing what Freemasonry is today, its positive effect on society, and the work it does for improving the lives of others. Misconceptions which have their roots in the past remain, and we hope we have a duty to our members, to address these and explain modern Freemasonry to the public. We are immensely proud of the work our members do in supporting Freemasonry and their high standards and character, often countering external negative stereotypes by highlighting that Freemasons are ordinary people making positive contributions to their communities. So that's the decision. So ND, I have no problem with you being a Catholic. I have no problem with you being part of the Mithras, Templars, and others. You have a problem with me being a Freemason, which I suppose is your right, but that doesn't change the fact that it makes you kind of an asshole, because people have the right to freely associate. There's nothing within Freemasonry that stops one from following their religious affiliations and their religious, beliefs. So if you're going to be foolish, be foolish. But keep in mind, people are welcome, absolutely welcome to believe what they so choose, right? So I would never say to somebody, for example, it's time that you left Catholicism to join Freemasonry. Because first of all, you can be a Catholic and a Freemason. But second of all, people are welcome to, if Catholicism brings you peace and happiness, then more power to you. Welcome back. Oh, well, there you go. See, I did not know anything about the Mithras, or the Templars. Now, obviously, there's Knights of Columbus, which, again, I have zero concern about them. I think they're a great group. I hope that they grow. I know that they're struggling. I think many of us in the civic space are struggling without question. So, I mean, I wish nothing but the best for them as well as for any other civic group. And I think the Knights they do a ton of really incredible charitable work as well. So I wish them success. I wish them the best. And yeah, in my opinion, I would believe, um, and I would absolutely suspect that as Freemasonry were to grow, or if it grows, you will also see, in my opinion, a growth in Knights of Columbus, as well as the Elks, as well as the Moose, anything in between. Is that what it is? I had no idea what the name was. So then he's definitely off his rocker. All right, well, fair enough. Sometimes people end up off of their rockers. It sucks, but there you go. Right? But again, I've said this before, right? It's people absolutely have and should. I mean, I attended a little while ago because I'm trying to see if I can get a Catholic minister or a priest or father on the podcast to talk about Catholic views of Freemasonry. So I attended a Catholic service actually, it was last week. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to speak with the minister after. I obviously did not take communion because I'm Anglican. And even if I wasn't, I'm a Freemason, so I don't believe I'm allowed to take communion. But it was a beautiful service. Everybody was very friendly and very kind. And yeah, it's one of those things where it's everybody can, if you're looking for civic engagement and engagement in the civic space, Freemasonry is a great option for you, but it's one of many options. By the same token, when it comes to your religious affiliations and beliefs, if you're Catholic, then I encourage you to go to Mass and speak with your Catholic priest or your father. If you're Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, whatever it is, I encourage you to find, and be faithful to and dedicated to your religious understandings. Interesting. I've heard of that as well, Mr. Courtney. A lot of groups are going in that direction of not reading out the minutes, but rather sending them out in advance. So I think that's a good thing. Also, I've been checking in with some of my friends. It seems like things have gotten calm once again in Puerto Vallarta, which I'm happy to see, happy to read that because I have a lot of Masonic brothers and friends in Puerto Vallarta. So I wish them nothing but the best. And I'm happy to see things are going well for them. Seems like things have calmed down. There's no more reports of violence, knock on wood. I understand that flights have resumed. Again, I'm not suggesting by any means that, if you feel unsafe or you're concerned about traveling there, then keep in touch with what's happening. Pay attention to travel advisories. Do what makes you feel safe. But I'm just hoping and wishing everybody in Puerto Vallarta is safe, especially my Masonic brethren. We're going to give it a bit more time. We're going to wait to see who joins. Please, as always, take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button. We're almost done, by the way. We're almost done, by the way, our Push for Better challenge. I don't know if you guys have been doing them with me, but if you have, I think that'd be awesome. Or if you want to do them with me, I think that'd be awesome. In terms of things I have coming up, let me actually get the dates available just so you guys know. Let's see. All right, hold on just one second. Get my calendar up and running. Thank you, Mr. Courtney. That's very kind of you, and I'll send you some of those bookmarks. All right, so let's see. On March 11th and 12th, there is the Medium Pub Crawl. It's a Zoom event where I get to virtually meet a whole bunch of content creators and writers on Zoom. On Zoom who produce content through Medium. Medium is basically YouTube for writers. It is where you can share your written content and your written work. So 11th to 12th, I'm not going to be live streaming. March 11th to March 12th, I'm not going to be live streaming. Rather, what I'm going to be doing is taking part in the Medium Zoom pub crawl and promoting my written Masonic work and my written Masonic content. Now, you can find that through medium.com, Square and Compass Promotions. It's free to follow me there, so I hope you'll consider doing so. On the 9th, I'm actually going to a community services conference, a blood donor. It's being put on by Canadian Blood Services. I'm a big believer in blood donation as well as organ donation. So it is a, oops, sorry, just one sec. It is a, what is it called? A Partners for Life networking night at the Windsor Blood Donor Center, Monday, March 9th, from 5 to 7 p.m. An exclusive networking evening where you can connect with local businesses, tour the facility, enjoy refreshments, and discover how you can make an impact on the community. Even enter some prizes. So I'm going to be attending that as well, and hopefully getting some more interest in my community services event, which takes place March 28th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. That's March 28th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. We're going to have a variety of community services within the Windsor Masonic Temple. It's going to be a blast. I cannot wait to be there. I can't wait to see all these community services, getting a chance to discuss what they do, not just to community members, but Freemasons, and to network with one another also. So it will be a lot of fun. So that's what I've got coming up. In the meantime, we're back to just hanging out, waiting to see who joins and who wants to chat. Jump in the comments, say hello. And we got 20 votes. Interestingly enough, no is at 15%. 75%. Yes is at 25. So most, it looks like, want UGLE to continue with the process of challenging the declarable association's opinion. But having said that, I mean, at the end of the day, we need to keep in mind it's not our decision, right? It's UGLE's decision. I think we need to always give them a level of grace. They have to balance a lot of different things. Me personally, I would say, however, I'm probably more on the side of, I understand why the Metropolitan Police made that decision. So we're going to give it a bit more time and wait to see who joins. Nice. I hope, like I said, maybe we can display it on the 28th. That could be really fun. So we'll see. But maybe on the 28th, we'll display it. Like I said, you'll have your coin then as well. Nice. I mean, I've never been to Waco, but it's on my list of places I'd love to visit. So I've been around it. I've been to Fort Worth Dallas a bunch of times. So who knows? Maybe I'll get the chance soon. We're not just going to wait to see who joins. I just want to talk about the UGLE decision. I mean, also on a side note, it is the State of the Union tonight. I'm not going to be able to watch it. I've got some um, Masonic stuff, which I got to do. But people have been noting that we can expect to hear about the tariffs in the Supreme Court. Tariffs will affect Freemasons. As things get more or less expensive, Freemasonry feels the burden. The economy and affordability. Um, Iran and its nuclear program, elections, past and future. At least that's the four things the CBC says we can expect to hear about. So we shall see. It's funny, part of me is thinking about if I can find a cheap flight going to visit Puerto Vallarta to see my Masonic brethren there. Again, just because it's, maybe I can help spread the message that actually Puerto Vallarta seems to be, at least reportedly, safe. Again, listen to the authorities, do what makes you feel safe. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where maybe and hopefully people will start to things will get back to normal, and my Masonic brothers will get back to normal, and Freemasonry in Puerto Vallarta will get back to normal. If I can, I doubt it. It'd be way too expensive. Help me out, give me a 99-cent super chat. But I mean, maybe even next year I'll do it, or even summer, or actually in winter. It's tough because you got to find like the best time to fly that's super cheap. Like going to Chicago, usually you can find a pretty decent discount and a pretty decent deal. Either taking the Amtrak or the bus. With flying, sometimes you get lucky, but it's hard. Gym rat, I mean, which is perfectly fine. You should, give whatever advice makes you feel safe. I can say, and I've said this before, I've been to Puerto Vallarta 3 times. Every time I felt safe, every time I loved it. Really nice people, really cool Masons. Having said that, again, if your son and wife aren't comfortable going, then that's okay. Well, yeah, Mr. Courtney, it's indirect, but it's still an effect, right? Whether the effect is direct or indirect, we still have to keep in mind the effect. So it's one of those things where it's absolutely a risk. Because again, if things become more expensive, at what point do Freemasons have to start making a decision? Can I afford to pay my dues? Or am I going to have to spend more money on, let's say, building materials or supplies if they are renovating their house? I have not, and that's a very valid point. I have not been there after the biggest drug lord in the world was killed. I don't know if he was the biggest drug lord. I don't actually know how you determine that, but he was certainly a fairly prominent one. There's no question about that. Again, it's whatever your family is comfortable with. Itchy, yeah, that's the thing, right? That's what I was thinking of it because Mexico is having such great deals. I was considering it. I'm assuming that they're going to probably make things really cheap to try to encourage tourism once again. We'll see. Um, okay, again, I don't know how you define number one in the world. He was certainly very, very big. Unfortunately, one of the things I've seen that makes me incredibly sad is the OXO, OXXO. I saw some pictures of that being, one of them anyways, being burned and looted and destroyed. And that makes me sad because I will say, every time I was in Puerto Vallarta, the OXO, OXXO, was like it was always there for me. I'll say that. It had great deals. It was most people's local convenience store, including mine, when I was visiting. I loved the OXOs. They had great espresso flavored Snickers bars, which I loved. Um, they may become more expensive. Absolutely, the metals, I would assume, would almost certainly become more expensive. The aprons, maybe. We'll see. It could be. I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of pictures. Uh, oh, it looks like more than one OXO store. Actually, I see a picture on Facebook right now from a Tom Irwin who's sitting at the beach talking about it's beautiful and wonderful. Again, I'm not one who's going to say, tell people what to do when it comes to traveling to Puerto Vallarta. Rather, you do whatever you think is most, whatever makes you feel the safest and the most comfortable. And if that means canceling trips or postponing trips or changing the destination of trips, that is perfectly okay. And I completely understand. Again, for me, it's one of those things of I know how much the economy in Puerto Vallarta relies on tourism. I know how much many of my brothers, for their businesses, rely on tourist dollars. I don't want to see them suffer. But that's my own personal opinion. If you have a family and you are concerned about them traveling there, maybe cancel the trip, maybe postpone the trip, maybe pick a new destination. I wouldn't be surprised, I can't speak for sure, if airlines are offering either free cancellations or maybe allowing you to switch, to switch where you go for free. It wouldn't shock me. So I don't know what the U.S. government is saying right now. I'd assume that there's a travel warning in effect. There is, to my knowledge, still a travel warning for Canadians traveling there. However, I have put on my social media accounts a ton of information about resources you can use. For example, how to register with the government when you're traveling so that if you do end up in an emergency or crisis situation, the government knows how to contact you or knows how to contact emergency contacts. Toll free 24/7 numbers you can call if there's an emergency. Consular numbers, websites, things of that nature that you can do to just information you can have to keep yourself safe. As a Canadian traveling, I would assume Americans have some similar things. Hello, Sammy. Please hit like and subscribe. I'd very much appreciate it. I've been there, but again, that's the thing I was saying. I've been thinking of visiting. I was saying it's funny. I've been thinking of going back there to see it firsthand, to check out and support my Masonic brothers, but I'll see. There's probably not going to happen because I'm trying to save my money for another trip. I'm very close to going very soon, or in April, and that's going to be a little bit more expensive. So, but again, it's one of those things where people do what you think is safe. Again, that's what I want to emphasize. Do what you believe is safe. Do what you think is safe, and what you're comfortable with. Know about the resources that are available. Know how to travel safely. Um, well, it's again, I might, but it might be very expensive. And I got a Masonic meeting tonight, so I can't go now. I have my Scottish Rite meeting tonight, Rose Qua. So no, I will not go now. I hope, though, what people will do now is hit the like button and the subscribe button. I am one subscriber away, or sorry, 4 subscribers away from 3,610. So let's see if we can get there. Don't do drugs, would be my advice to you. Do not do drugs. Well, Cook Ministries, you are wrong on 3 accounts. Freemasonry is not satanic. It is not run by Luciferians, nor was it started by Luciferians. So the one thing I guess you said that's true is I do deny it, but I deny it because it is not true. So there you go. You can take that for whatever it's worth. So there's a lot of things that Cook is incorrect about. Yeah, looks like airlines have resumed operations. It is from the 16th degree to the 18th degree, so it's the Rose Qua. So on the second Tuesday of the month, there's a Lodge of Perfection meeting, which is the 4th degree to the 15th degree. Excuse me, 4th degree to the 14th degree. And then in the 4th, it is 18th, 16th to 18th. Now, it is 16th, 18th degree. Sorry, 15th, 18th degree. I can talk. Perfection 4 to 14, Rose Qua 15 to 18. There are no top levels, itchy fingers. That is where you get it wrong. The top level in Freemasonry is the 3rd degree. That's the highest level in Freemasonry. Freemasonry is decentralized, so you need to remember that and understand that. Following government advisories to travel is always very good advice. And if you don't want to follow them, at least be aware of them at the very least. But I would say following advisories is usually a really good idea. So Freemasonry is not a cult, either in capital letters or otherwise. I've talked about why it's not a cult in the past. So you can check out my previous streams about that. But Freemasonry is not a cult. Cook Ministries, it sounds like you might be in some type of cult. A cult probably developed through social media. He was, and why does that matter? Why is Albert Pike important or relevant? Just waiting to hear if Itchy Fingers has a answer to why Albert Pike is important or why he thinks Albert Pike is important. And how does Albert Pike, for example, affect? Well, I don't think following Jesus is a cult. I think you're in a cult in the sense that you've been probably brought in by social media, which can be a type of cult, to believe nonsense about Freemasonry. So it's a cult type of thinking, which is Freemasonry is whatever, a cult or evil or bad or whatever it is you believe. You know, following Jesus is a religion or religious belief, and you could be Catholic or Christian or Protestant or non-denominational, or I don't know all the different denominations. All of that stuff is not being part of a cult. The cult is when you believe, for example, or the cult type of thinking is when you believe one thing despite the evidence to the contrary. You can do whatever you want, Jim Rat. I would say, just keep in mind, try to be safe. Actually, there is just a report by travel.gc.ca. Canadians in Mexico. Roads are reopening. Airports in Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara are open. Travel there only if you have a confirmed flight and it is safe to do so. Give yourself extra time to get there and plan to arrive early. More info, travel.gc.ca/destinations/Mexico. Well, I'm not going to recite my oath because that's between me and my oath. I do not know what the Jesuit oath says. But Freemasonry, the oaths were developed in the 17th century, actually 18th century technically, with the most recent one, the 3rd degree, being developed around 1730, something like that. We are not a religion for a variety of reasons. We make no promises of salvation nor threats of damnation. We do not have a single interpretation as mediated through a centralized authority or centralized figure or a centralized book. And certainly from a government perspective, no Masonic lodges are, to my knowledge, treated as a religious institution for taxation purposes. Um, well, then I guess I'm a complete idiot, Itchy Fingers. I know the Masonic symbolism. I've never seen anything satanic therein. For example, the most common symbol, the squared compasses with the G in the middle, I cannot imagine how that is meant to look or be satanic. The all-seeing eye, the eye of providence, that's also the eye of Ra. That's actually predates, in some ways, Freemasonry. And it's not satanic. It also predates, to my understanding, the idea of Satan. We're still just hanging out, waiting to see who wants to join. De Molay. Yeah, named after Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. It is a youth group for, if I recall correctly, 13 to 21. I used to think 9 to 21. I don't know why I thought 9. I think I got it mixed up with Rainbow. 13 to 21. Um, so there you go. So I don't know who they are, but usually when people say they, I immediately think, okay, baloney. If you are the type of person who uses the term they, that's a way to not think, right? That's a way to not think. So you need to keep that in mind, because by saying they, you don't have to define it, and it can mean whatever you need it to mean while trying to make your point. It's a very kind of lazy way to try to argue and make points. Um, she is doing good. I don't know where she is right now. She's probably on my bed. She's doing well. She was actually sick yesterday. She threw up, which always makes me sad. But she seems to be feeling better today. She's eating again. So maybe just a stomach bug. Who knows? But Freemasonry is actually the opposite of being concentrated, right? That's the biggest thing you need to keep in mind. Within Freemasonry, there is no centralized authority. It's not as though there is a single governing body with a they telling Freemasons around the world what to do. There is a Grand Master in Ontario, for example, but he is responsible for Freemasonry in Ontario. He has no authority or control outside of Ontario. Just to, help you understand that. Well, I would say what you've researched sounds like it's baloney to me. So again, I don't know what you've researched, but it sounds like a lot of nonsense. But I mean, you're free to believe whatever you want. It just happens to just not be true. But within that context, I mean, like I said, you are free, of course, to believe whatever you want to believe. Um, and like everything in life, you kind of make your choices, and you can use your reason and your own best judgment. And if you kind of keep believing the research, then so be it. I would say, I brought this up before, right? I've been a Freemason for just about 20 years. I've been to over 1,000 Masonic events all around the world. North America, South America, and everything in between. So there you go. By the way, the Embassy of Mexico in the U.S. update on security and travel conditions in Mexico. The security situation has now stabilized following targeted operations in Jalisco. Federal and state authorities are proceeding to reopen transit corridors and restore public services smoothly. Airline operations are normal and international carriers are resuming flights today. Puerto Vallarta International has reopened to domestic traffic. If traveling through Jalisco, some local security measures remain in place. Insight, Freemasonry is not Satan, nor is it satanic. I've never read Proofs of Conspiracy. What are the higher ranks within Freemasonry? Because if I've been one for 20 years, and if I've traveled around the world, and if I'm a master mason, if I'm a worshipful master, how much higher can I get? He was, I think, a 33rd, but what difference does it make if it was 32nd or 33rd? Joe Mama, why is Albert Pike relevant? Right? Why is Albert Pike relevant? Why does he matter to my Masonic journey or to the Masonic journey of my brothers? It's not how it works. Again, it shows a misunderstanding of what Freemasonry is. The highest degree within Freemasonry is the 3rd degree of Freemasonry. That is the Master Mason degree. The highest office within Freemasonry is Worshipful Master, or you could argue maybe Installing Master. He wrote some of the manuals in use. Which manuals? And by the way, in what jurisdictions? You do not. I mean, there are some officers who sometimes will get what's called um, a stipend, like a secretary may get, I've heard like $50 a month because he has administrative costs, but that's about it. So I've read Morals and Dogmas. Again, what does that have to do with my Masonic journey? How does it matter to me what Albert Pike said? How does it affect my Masonic career? If Albert Pike were to be reincarnated and brought to a Masonic lodge meeting, one of my Masonic lodge meetings, where would he sit? What relevance would he have? What importance would he have? What influence would he have? You say this, but you have no idea what that book is, what it represents, the lack of power Albert Pike actually has within the average Masonic meeting, within most people's Masonic journey. It's completely irrelevant to York, right? Completely irrelevant to De Molay, completely irrelevant to Craft Lodge, completely irrelevant to Eastern Star, the Shrine. It's not moving the goalposts, it's placing the goalposts where they actually should be, not where you think they should be. Albert Pike was one Mason. He was out of the Southern Masonic jurisdiction of Scottish Rite. He was, I can't remember the title, Grand Inspector, I think is the term. That has nothing to do with, for example, the Northern Masonic jurisdictions. Also, the first 3 degrees within Freemasonry are separate from Scottish Rite, the craft degrees. There is in Louisiana Scottish Rite first 3 degrees. But one of the best quotes ever about Albert Pike was from a York Mason, a friend of mine, who pointed out, why would I give a shit about Albert Pike? He has nothing to do with my Masonic journey. And he doesn't. For a York Rite Mason, for a Shriner, for craft degree, for emulation ritual, for the youth groups, Albert Pike, you could argue, is irrelevant. Most police officers are not Freemasons. And again, the extent of having the Masonic symbol on your license plate is up to it's about promoting the craft. Nothing, if you're speeding, you should get pulled over by a police officer. Absolutely. Dream Seeker puts it very well. And if I were to write a book, at most what you could say about that book is it's a representation of maybe how I ran my Masonic lodge. It's not a representation of Freemasonry as a whole, nor does it have official status, except maybe at most within my Masonic lodge. But Freemasonry is decentralized. There is no single governing body that is responsible for Freemasonry as a whole or Freemasonry, quote unquote, around the world or globally. And that includes Albert Pike and Rose and Dogma. Well, they can tell you whatever they want to. That doesn't mean it's true. I'm not, in my experience, Freemasonry does not represent um, a majority of police officers are Freemasons. That at least has not been my experience. Sovereign Grand Commander. Okay, there we go. I was trying to think of the title. I couldn't off the top of my head. Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite. Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction. So, like, it may sound like I'm knocking or calling BS on Albert Pike. He had a great deal of value to the craft. There's no mistake or no doubt. However, the idea that he speaks for the entirety of Freemasonry or most people's Masonic career or journey is just not the case. And a constant emphasis on him is one of the biggest mistakes conspiracy theorists around the world make. Well, there is a real organization. However, that organization is decentralized. That's the point. It's not as though there's a single governing body that is telling Freemasons in Ontario what to do. There's a Grand Master in Ontario. See, I think for you, Itchy Fingers, you have this idea that for something to be a legitimate organization, it needs to have a global, a global or single governing body, as opposed to having a decentralized governing body where no one individual speaks for Freemasonry around the world. I think you just misunderstand what it means to be a federalized or decentralized group. It's kind of like saying I'm a member of the armed forces. That doesn't mean I speak for the armed forces or that I'm a member of every single armed forces around the world, right? I could be a member of the armed forces in Canada. That doesn't mean that the president of the United States can order me and tell me what to do, or the prime minister of England. It's decentralized. It's a membership status and a membership designation, but that is nonetheless, nonetheless, for lack of a better term, centralized. And a lot of people misunderstand that about Freemasonry. They think that Freemasonry is a single governing body or a single governing organization, or has a single governing structure, some type of higher rank that controls everything at every degree below, and that's just not the case. Freemasonry in Ontario is different than Freemasonry in Chicago, is different than Freemasonry in Texas, is different than Freemasonry in Illinois, in Israel, but they all recognize one another. Um, um, well, it shouldn't give me immunity. Nobody should be joining Freemasonry to be given immunity. That would be, I mean, if you're joining Freemasonry because you want to get away with something, that's bull, and that should not happen. You are joining Freemasonry, you are still a citizen. You are a citizen first. And as being a citizen first, you should not be getting immunity to get special treatment. And Itchy Fingers, if you're joining any group because you want to get away with things, then I can assure you Freemasonry is not for you. But the idea of being scammed, I mean, that's baloney too. That's bullshit. Like imagine you fly into Chicago, you have a 10-hour layover between from when you arrive and when you depart by bus. And imagine that there's a Masonic Lodge close to the airport, and that Masonic Lodge is having a special dinner and event, and you're able to go to that Masonic Lodge, get a free meal, hang out with your brothers, grab some coffee, enjoy one another's company before then getting on a bus and heading home. How is that possibly a scam? Not craft. I mean, the craft is in craftsmen, as in people who build things. But you know that, itchy fingers, and you're just trolling because you're foolish. You know what I mean by the craft, not witchcraft, craftsmen, builders. Could be carpenters, could be stonemasons, could be anything in between. But that's from where the term craft derives. We're going to give this another, let's say, 9 minutes. Then we will be ending this stream. I'll be back on at 1 a.m., however. Mr. Keeps, wow, York opens the doors to... I've never heard the term... Aethystan. Is that the king of the Anglo-Saxons? We have the Allied Masonic degrees. That is part of York, for sure. Hold on one second. Aethystan. I think you mean Athelstan. Is that the he was the king of he was the king of England at some point or another. I forget when it was, right? The Masonic Order of Athelstan portrays the story of Master Mason called to York in 926. Probably. Oops. Yeah. It took me, I thought you meant atheist for a second. Oops. What's going on? Come on. There we go. It's the Athelstan. It's the King of England, King of Britain, 926. I knew about the Allied Masonic degrees. That's actually, there are, I forget how many Allied Masonic degrees there are, but ages ago, I had a member of the, a little bit later than that, I think, Jados. He was a member of the Allied Masonic degrees. I can't think of his name now, but he goes by Team Badger on Moses Gomez, to talk about the Allied Masonic degrees. Every year, I think it's around June, they actually have a big gathering in New York. I don't disagree with you, Rondo. I'm one of the ones who's more on the side of the Met Police, but I understand the concerns. And yeah, night degrees as well. But again, it's not something I know much about because I'm not a York Rite guy. There's honestly, like we had a presentation about this in Lodge a couple weeks ago. There could be like legitimately 100 Masonic bodies you can join. It gets pretty complicated pretty quickly, to be honest. And I don't know everything about all of them, right? But the most important thing to remember is you don't need to know everything about every Masonic degree to have a base understanding of what Freemasonry is. One of the biggest dangers we have, I think, with conspiracy theories especially, is this idea that they develop that one degree can speak for the whole. That's not how it works. You can ask a question, Ty Kroc, although usually when someone says they're not trying to be rude, sets off alarm bells a little bit, but we'll see. What is your question? I don't find that rude. Um, I was born missing my legs. So yeah, I was born missing my legs. So I never, it's one of those things when you're born missing your legs, it's like you kind of just grow used to it. So you kind of grow up and you learn how to move and work with it. I think it'd be much harder to have, I think it'd be much more difficult to lose your limbs later on in life. Although even then, many people do, and they get artificial legs and they go on to lead, you know, very successful lives, especially with the extent that we have um, some really incredible technology, some really incredible um, artificial limbs and wheelchairs and services. I certainly think I'm very grateful that I was born in 1983 at a time when having a disability was not nearly the issue that it had been for centuries before. No worries. All right, guys, we are going to end this stream for a variety of reasons, um, including, but not limited to the fact that my phone is about to die. So I will talk to you guys soon. I'll be back on at 1 a.m. tonight. Thank you all for being here.